Heading to the Texas-Mexico border for a campaign-style rally. Counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, sees border security shaping up as a major campaign issue.
And I think every 2020 Democratic aspirant should be asked, do you agree with that? Do you agree that we don't need any type of physical barrier at our southern border?
The president last week in his State of the Union address claimed that El Paso had been a hotbed of crime before a wall was built there. But according to FBI data, the city had low crime rates well before a border barrier was constructed. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
Pro-life Texans are trying to make sure their governor fulfills a promise to a dying teenager. Charlie Butts has that story.
16-year-old Jeremiah Thomas of Waco, Texas, suffered a severe form of cancer, and it took his life. But before dying, he fulfilled his wish through the Make-A-Wish Foundation to talk to Governor Greg Abbott to ask that he end abortions. He had that conversation, and the governor committed. Joe Goodson of Concerned Christian Citizens tells AFN that's where it ended.
70,000 petitions were delivered to Governor Greg Abbott's office, and we were hoping that Greg Abbott would make a special emergency priority out of abolishing abortion.
Representative Tony Tinderholt of Arlington, Texas, introduced a bill in the House in 2017 to abolish abortion.
It did not receive much traction even from pro-life candidates because it's too politically risky. And what is pro-life if it's not ending abortion? And so we're really in need of folks calling their representatives this time around.
Tinderholt has introduced the Jeremiah's Wish bill in the House again and is hopeful a companion bill will be submitted in the Texas Senate. People are contacting the governor's office, urging him to get on board. I'm Charlie Butts.
And Americans are expected to spend a record amount this Valentine's Day, despite a years-long decrease in the percentage of people celebrating the holiday. That's according to the National Retail Federation, which finds consumers will spend an average of $161.96. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
The Awakening with Bishop E.W. Jackson.
I guarantee you would need a magnifying glass and a pair of tweezers to go across this country and find a liberal who is emotionally moved by the national anthem or by the sacrifice of our military people.
Making a difference in the culture.
Jesus said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And when you have a filthy heart, you have a filthy mouth.
The Awakening with Bishop E.W. Jackson. Weekdays at 9 a.m. Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The president is going down to El Paso. He wants to take the case directly to an area that would be affected positively if his view of legal and safe immigration and a physical barrier wall would come to fruition.
She asked me a question. Is a shutdown entirely off the table? The answer is no.
Every negotiation, almost every negotiation out there hits bumps in the roads. There are bumps in the road, but as long as we stay focused in a bipartisan way, bicameral way, to get this done, I'm hopeful we can get it done. Is it a done deal? No, it isn't. And we could end up in a train wreck, which happened before. But I don't think anybody has an appetite for a government shutdown.
I'll say 50-50 we get a deal. I hope and pray we do.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Well, I gotta say, I really echo those comments of hoping that the Congress can come up with a deal. I just saw, fresh out just moments ago, a piece over at the Hill where Mick Mulvaney is saying they're going to build the wall no matter what. They've got the funds set aside, and even if Congress comes up with 1.5 to 2.5 billion, which that also has been something that's been floated by congressional Democrats who want to get out from under this, they're talking about doing that too. And if that's the way they go, the president will just reallocate funds from elsewhere within the government. But it's interesting to see the Democrats try to move around on this and just, they don't know which way to go. They don't know which way is up. They're not sure how they can get what they want, yet get what they want, yet not give the president anything that he wants. Public sentiment is not with them right now. The president's poll numbers have actually popped. He's looking at 50, 52%, depending on which poll you're looking at. That means the American people are ready to move on. They don't see a benefit to having a second government shutdown. And they also don't see a benefit to continuing to fight over something that's pretty logical. And day after day, we see stories coming out of families who've lost loved ones to illegal alien crime. And I know for a lot of Americans who really are partisan, they don't care about that. But for Americans who don't have a partisan bent and are not really just, bowing down to the Democrats, there has to be a moment where you say to yourself, well, if we could prevent that by just having a little more border barrier, maybe that's what we should do. So welcome to the show today, everybody. Monday, we've had such an interesting weekend. We had horrible freezing weather here in St. Louis and the Midwest, generally speaking, which ended up with some churches canceling services and it's just been a really interesting weather time. And I'm not usually one to do a whole lot of complaining about it, but I want the mild weather that we had before. We'd been promised global warming. I thought we were getting some, and then here we are. I want the global warming I was promised. I've asked before, I'll ask again, just resubmitting my request for the global warming that they were and I know now they're saying it's climate change. I know they've changed their minds. I know they're not honorable. But anyway, so today on the program, we're going to be speaking with, this is a real fantastic get for us as a guest. Her name is Magdalene Rose. She is on Twitter, and she did this viral video about the origins of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's online viral success. Now, you might be thinking, you said we were going to talk about her. Well, we're not going to talk about Alexandria. We're going to talk about what we've seen in the way of her viral campaigns and her ability to really move and shape opinion online, which has given her a considerable amount of power, where a lot of people want her to retweet them. They want to deal with her on their television shows. They want her on their radio programs because they feel that if they can get her on, she can share some of that momentum from social media with them. Now, I know, personally speaking, I have found that sometimes you can get a little bit of traction from someone else retweeting you or sharing what you have. That is indeed how you go viral. But it's interesting because that's not the phenomenon that she's engaging in. People aren't going to say, oh, she's on this show, let's follow that show, let's spend time on that show. People are there for AOC if they're there for AOC. So it's a single channel, single like, it's a following that she has. But she built it up not completely on her own. And I don't believe in that whole you didn't build that stuff. But she has had help. And so that's what this viral video that Magdalene Rose actually shot on Periscope, it explains the origins of that. And I think it's important for us to note because her chief of staff, AOC's chief of staff, is actually very well connected up within the hardcore left ideological spectrum, which means that there are things we can kind of knit together and learn from the history behind the rise. So it's super important for us to talk about that. We'll have her on, and we're going to be discussing, obviously, the poll numbers. The 42 million Latin Americans who were asked in a poll, would you like to live in the U.S.? Yeah, 42 million of them said yeah, and 5 million are planning on moving here by hook or by crook within the next 12 months. 5 million more Latin Americans. That is just under the population of the entire state of Missouri, just in case you're wondering, where will these people go? I always talk about how there's plenty of room in the United States, and we do have plenty of room. But when I say we have plenty of room, I'm speaking of we don't need population control. We don't need to, tell everybody to have only one child or 2 kids and then start aborting everybody else. We don't need that. We have plenty of room. But the room I'm talking about is for citizens, American citizens, legal, lawful immigrants, and everybody else needs to just get out. Go back to where you came from and wait. Because if you're coming in here and you're not doing so legally, you're basically an affront to all of us who are here and our taxpayers. And that is not something I'm willing to be educated on, or I don't need anybody to teach me anything. I don't need anybody to share links or documents with me. I'm standing firm on that because that's the law. And I never see that, if you get pulled over for speeding or for your tags not being in date, the police officer doesn't say, okay, I think you're breaking the law, change my mind. Or show me some research as to why you exceeding the speed limit by 7, it's not really as offensive as I find it to be, because I'm looking to give you a ticket right now. No one ever gives Americans the chance to change the mind of the legal system on any issue. It's just immigration where we're supposed to say, you know what? I've changed my mind. everyone who's here unlawfully gets to stay. Anyone who was brought here unlawfully as a kid should get to stay and be an American citizen and vote. And, welcome to the new America. Why is it only them who they get this different treatment? So first off, I want to get into our daily confession, which I thought this was super encouraging for me, and I hope it will be for you too. It's Philippians 4:6. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition and thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Stand firm in the Lord. So the verse before that is, let your gentleness be apparent to all, the Lord is near. Let your gentleness be apparent to all, the Lord is near. Now, this is not an invitation to be walked all over or to, anytime someone confronts you, you just bow down and, okay, fine. This is not an invitation for pansy Christianity, but it is about gentleness of spirit, meekness of mind, and a heart that leans towards others. And so it says, be anxious for nothing. Right after that, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, this is verse 7, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So if we allow our gentleness to be apparent to all, the Lord is always near. Then we can be anxious for nothing, and we can pray about situations, be they teeny tiny little ones or big ones, big situations that are really, we understand our frailty and we can't handle them ourselves. We present our requests to God, knowing that he is more than able to do above all that we dare ask or think, according to the power which works in us, which is the Holy Spirit, and that he will do it. He is the chain breaker, the prayer answerer, the way maker. He provides a means of escape for us when we're tempted, and he stands with us when we are in need. He's always near. He's always available to us. So a couple of additional scriptures to go with that. Proverbs 3:6 says, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And we all know how hard it is to traverse a crooked path. And the crooked path is obviously a euphemism for a life full of twists and turns, and the way is never clear or straight because of sin and the impacts of sin. So we want to avoid that and have a straight path, which the path can only be straight when it is made so by God. And the last scripture reference I'll give to you, Matthew 6:25. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? It is. As much as I enjoy, the new cowgirl boot purchase and, all that goes with that, the most important condition is that of the heart. And the way to have our heart condition be right is to continually look to God. And so this is super encouraging. It's Philippians. I'll expand that. Philippians 4:5-7, which is what I shared. This is awesome. So praise God for that, and I hope that you're encouraged by it. So now let's talk about these new, it's just like every day there's a new candidate on the D side. Kirsten Gillibrand, who is, in my opinion, she actually looks a little bit like Hillary Clinton. She's blonde. She's actually one of those people that, she's been under the radar enough. She's had a few, like if you pay attention to the news a lot, she's had some very, very offensive moments. But if you're a mainstream American with just, a tertiary absorption of news, Kirsten Gillibrand might look like someone safe who she's not a Republican. She's on the left, clearly, but she's not a crazy Democrat. Well, here she is dispelling that myth for you with her own mouth. She was asked about eliminating private health insurance. That means your employer-based plan, your plan that you have in a co-op, the plan that you may be accessing through your own work as an individual contractor. Anything you've negotiated with the private health insurer would be eliminated. That's 177 million Americans who would basically be shunted onto Medicare. Listen to her talk about this. It's unbelievable. It's number 3.
One of the debates we've had recently is around what happens to private insurance. Should ending private insurance as we know it be a Democratic Party goal? And do you think it's an urgent goal?
Oh, yeah. It is a goal and an urgent goal, but let me explain. I ran on Medicare for All in 2006. in my upstate New York 2-to-1 Republican district. And the reason I ran on that message was because I listened first. I traveled around the district, asked people what's on your mind, what's your worry. Overwhelmingly, they said, I'm worried about access to health care.
So her interpretation of families in upstate New York saying they're concerned about access to health care, which if you think about it, they were concerned about it because the Democrats ran on it as an issue and made it sound as if most Americans didn't have access, when in reality, it was a very small segment of Americans, between 15 and 30 million Americans, who just didn't have access. And they didn't have access because the kind of slim, bare bones plans that 20-year-olds like to access, that people in between 20 and 30 like to access, it's just something to get you over the hump until you get your first job or until your business takes off. Those kinds of plans are not as palatable to a family of, 2 adults and a child, or a mom and 2 kids, or what have you. And so if you're working but your employer doesn't provide health insurance, you were caught in kind of a no zone, a no man's land, and you needed something. And so the Democrats started promising that the government would give that something to people. And then she, taking it upon herself to talk to constituents and voters and say, hey, what are you concerned about? Americans began to take this on as a concern. Whether they had health insurance or not, they were convinced that there were just, maybe 50, 70, 100 million Americans who didn't have health insurance, when the true number was between 15 and 30 million. So then Kirsten Gillibrand's answer is, it's really, it's like you take a Peugeot, 1960 Peugeot, and it's just like barely running, and you go out and pry off a Mercedes-Benz logo or a BMW, the emblem, and you just, use the bear glue, the glue that glues anything, and just slap it on the Peugeot and call it done. Well, that Peugeot is not going to run like a new BMW. It's not going to run like a BMW at all, if it runs at all. You can't just take a sticker off something and slap it on something else and make it work well like the original item. You can't take Medicare and make it work like private health insurance. And this is something that we keep seeing. Over and over and over again, the Democrats keep saying they can take health insurance and provide it to you through the government, and you'll like it. We have Obamacare. People don't like that. How do they expect to make Medicare for all something we'll like? She's too extreme to be the president of the United States. Sorry, she's just too extreme. So right now I want to go to something really important that we're doing this week, and it's the rescue of a child. Provide a day of safety in India's red light districts. Go now to 877-616-2396 by your phone or your cell phone, 877-616-2396, or go to afr.net and give online. We need you to partner with us. India Partners is rescuing children in the Mumbai red light district, and you can provide 1 day of safety for $7.08. afr.net to join us. We'll be right back.
I wanted to have the abortion because I was trying to hide the situation.
When a young mom in crisis walks into a preborn pregnancy center, she's welcomed with open arms and given love, support, and a free ultrasound to meet her unborn baby. This young woman not only chose life for her baby, but heard the message of Jesus Christ and was comforted from the guilt and pain that plagued her. Preborn centers lead the nation in providing free ultrasounds. When an abortion-minded woman sees her baby on ultrasound, she's 80% more likely to choose life for her baby. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds, and 100% of your sponsorship goes towards saving babies. To find out more, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com, or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Your love can save a life.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. All of us are familiar with the line, it's better to light a candle than it is to curse the darkness. I couldn't agree with that more. Have you noticed how easy it is for us to be negative about stuff? Knowing what's wrong will not necessarily correct anything. Even among Christians, there's Verse 16 says, Now while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him, as he saw that the city was full of idols. Now stop right there. He could have said, hey, look, you see how bad things are? Idols are all over the place. People are messed up. They're confused. Look how awful it really is. But listen to verse 17. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Paul didn't just sit down and complain about how awful and godless this society is. Look at how bad it is. No, he determined, I need to light a candle. I need to let God use me to provide his supernatural solution for the sinfulness of this society. Here's what I want you to remember today. When you see something that disturbs you, why not pause and ask God what he would have you to do about what you see?
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org. Join Crawford tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. I'm so excited to speak to our next guest. She and I actually, I just saw her viral video on Periscope. And as I was watching it and listening to the research, I just got drawn in. I couldn't believe how much there was for me to know that I was completely unaware of as it pertains to the rise of Ocasio-Cortez in politics and how she's being allowed to shape so much of what Americans really think is important to talk about. And she's been given a complete, it's just like a blanket of protection, an iron dome of protection from having her ideas questioned and tested for their veracity. So this next guest, I'm so excited to speak to her. First of all, she's young. We're talking like she could probably be good friends with our older college daughter. And I'm not saying that because it's a bad thing. I'm saying it because this is the cutting edge of new media and journalism, is young people like our next guest coming out and really exposing things. And we have to give that kind of journalism a voice and a space for us to hear and discuss it. And that's why I'm excited to introduce our next guest. It's Magdalene Rose. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's talk about this. You have this viral video, which I saw, okay? And I was blown away by the detail that you share in the video. And I want to get to that information. But first off, what made you look into this? Why were you interested in the background to the social media phenomenon that is AOC?
Well, I was interested because I always see conservatives in my news feed, certain ones talking about her brilliance in social media and how she could be president and everything. And from where I was looking at her interviews, at the way she was talking talking on the floor of the House, I just didn't believe that. I didn't believe that she was this social media genius in private, but yet this not policy genius in public. And I wanted to know more about her background other than that she was a bartender and that she had gone, I think, to Boston University. I wanted to know who was really behind her because I didn't believe that she was behind herself.
So that is fantastic analysis. You basically, I don't believe my lying eyes. There's something going on here. There's something more to this because
yes,
it stands to reason, right, Magdalene? And if she was so brilliant to be able to create the just out of nowhere, she literally was no one. She's bartending. Next thing you know, she's got, 500,000 followers on Twitter and she's winning a primary with just 14,000 votes. So it was a tiny little election. But then all of a sudden, she's now presumptively a member of Congress because there is no challenger on the Republican side. What did you find?
I found that not only did she not speak out to become a member of Congress or to win a primary, and I give her the credit. I mean, unseating somebody in a district like that is an accomplishment, but it wasn't her accomplishment. She didn't seek to do this. Her chief of staff had to convince her to stop bartending. So I found not only that she is not truly attached to the ideas that she's espousing, but she's not even attached to what she's doing.
So you're saying, I just want to make sure that the listeners are getting this. You're saying, Magdalene, that she's bartending and living her life there. We all know she's got a great education, but She's bartending, and she's really living the life. She's having a good time and enjoying herself. And then she's approached to do this, and at first she's not on board. She's like not even really into this. She likes where she is.
Yes, and her brother nominated her for the organization that eventually found her into the run. Very similar to how girls are nominated by their friends and family on The Bachelor to date The Bachelor.
Okay. All right. So now we've got her in there. She's been nominated. She's reluctantly going along with it because she's like, I mean, what could happen? I'm not going to unseat this guy. But then what? Who steps in at that point?
At that point, Sakit Chakrabarty, her chief of staff, who was one of the heads of technology for Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign, and Corbin Trent, who was one of the people in charge of Sakit's organization, Justice Democrats, they step in and they start to use their considerable knowledge to make her presence in local social media known. So they make her known within the circles of the state representatives in her area, and they start to build her persona, and they created her viral announcement video, which was seen, I think, 1 million times, and they get her some press that way only in her district, really. So nationally, the DNC doesn't really know this is happening. Joe Crowley is not aware. He's focused on the speaker race, and all of a sudden, Joe Crowley is out, and we have this, socialist crazy person in charge.
Which I'm not even sure if she really believed that, because isn't there some kind of documentation that at one point she liked William Buckley?
Yes, in college, she is somebody who liked William Buckley, talked about the greatness of capitalism, was very involved in charities and altruism, and then it seems like she becomes a bartender and all of that goes away. And I think every conservative knows that if you make it through college as a conservative, you're most likely going to continue being a conservative.
So I'm still in a state of shock a bit, Magdalene. I'll be honest with you, because I just assumed that this was this ideological chick who went to Boston College, and the whole time she was there, she was noticing how difficult it was for, certain groups of people, maybe the lunch ladies or the cafeteria people, and she just was really a bleeding heart liberal, as many of us are in our 20s, right? She goes through, right. She graduates, she starts tending bar, and she realizes that even with her education, she's not doing what she thought she would do. And so she starts to maybe dance a little bit with socialism. So I just assumed that was the story, because that's been the story for so many other Democrats of prominence. And that what we saw was someone who really used her educational background to create these viral moments and capitalized on her youth and her, the nature of her looks, that she's attractive, and that she used that to create this upset that was something that sometimes people are just in the right place in the right moment, and they work hard enough, and they have a little bit of, what some people call luck, but whatever you call it, it all comes together with a synergy, and then suddenly you're in Congress. It doesn't happen a lot, but that's how I assumed it happened. And you're saying it's the opposite of that. We're looking at a totally made creation.
Yes, it's a totally made creation. And what's really interesting is that they tried to do this to keep Corbin Trent's organization with 10 other candidates in other districts across the United States that were that they thought were winnable. And of the 10 in total 11, she was the only one to succeed. So not only is she a creation, she's not even percentage-wise a successful creation, because they failed with the 10 other seats they targeted.
Okay, so this is where it really gets interesting, Magdalene, because your research, you didn't just look into her. You looked into the whole phenomenon. If they could have, they would have 10 or 11 Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, just different versions of her, in Congress right now spouting off socialism, but they were only able to pull off one.
Yes, and they were only able to pull off this one, I genuinely believe, because Crowley was so focused on the speaker's race and the leadership races, because he thought they were going to retake the House, that he didn't even he sent other people to debate her. So what happened was the people in her district sort of saw that as elitism, and that's not a district that is majority white. It is a minority district, and they identified with her. But Sakit, Corbin Trent could not recreate that in the other districts they targeted.
Okay, so What happens now? So, because what you're describing is something out of one of those cool movies. We've all seen these movies before. You know, they come straight out of Hollywood, and it's some brazen, brilliant, underestimated upstart, usually a woman, and she comes into a law firm or some business, and everyone thinks she's just going to kind of, date the boss's son and go off into that good night. And instead, by the end of the movie, she's the CEO, or she's busted down a huge utility company or something like that. And that's what this Ocasio-Cortez's story is being made out to. I saw that Netflix purchased a documentary about her and the other new members of Congress for $10 million. So they're not letting this go. She's not going away. What do we expect, and how can we stop this from being the new norm, these created candidates?
I think we can expect her to tear the Democrat Party apart in Congress. When she went after Hakeem Jeffries, the Black Caucus rebuffed that very quickly. This is not a woman who is sitting there thinking about world domination. Vicky and Corbin Trent are, but she's not. And to raise herself to the level that people think she's going to be, you have to be ambitious on your own, and she's not. I think the way we can stop this is we can pay attention in primary season to the candidates the Democrats are nominating and the groups behind them. Justice Democrats is behind the woman who recently made those anti-Semitic comments, Omar. They backed her. They backed Rashida. So we have to make sure that the candidates that Justice Democrats are backing are not getting voted in Democrat primaries. And we have to make sure that when we, are attacking the candidate, and this was what I was talking about when I was watching all these conservatives talk about if she was going to be president, that when we're attacking the candidate, we're making sure the content the candidate and the laws the candidate is trying to push are actually their own, because in her case, they're not. And I believe in Rashida's case, they're not. And in Omar's case, they're not.
So the other two that you've mentioned, Omar, she's all over the news today. Mm-hmm. People are angry with her on both sides of the aisle because she keeps saying things about Jewish people. It's like she can't stop. It's like she's got this weird, awful obsession with saying awful things about Jewish people, like not just Jewish Americans. She doesn't really talk about Jewish Americans at all. She talks about Israel. She's so into bashing Israel that she's made a statement that is really, really like it's the tip of the spear in anti-Semitism. Today, they're castigating her, Democrats and Republicans, for saying that the Jewish state pays for American support. So anyone who's supporting the Jewish state is doing so because they're paid. That is very offensive, and she's getting backlash for it. But she's another one who's basically just a sock puppet. She doesn't know anything on her own.
Yes, I think that in her case, I wrote about this in a tweet earlier, her obsession with Israel does come from her. But the other policies that she espouses, the socialism, the fact that she wants, a complete allowance for anyone to come in the country, those are policies that Justice Democrats back and have used her as a mouthpiece because the left and people in the media are so obsessed with diversity that they will, protect her. But I think that in terms of when she criticizes Israel, that genuinely comes from her heart. She has a strange obsession with, she's a new member of Congress. There are other things she's talking about in terms of economics that she can't allow herself, I think, even emotionally, to move away from criticizing Israel.
So I agree with you that she has a hatred for Israel that is something that's kind of indicative of it's mainstream Islam. It's so hard to talk about because I know there are Muslim Americans who don't practice that form of Islam and are very much patriotic Americans, but there are many, many millions of Muslims who believe in the things that Omar says, and they don't see anything wrong with her talking like that and being a Congress member. So when you look at the three of them, do you see, Magdalene, do you see them kind of creating more trouble than they're worth within the Democrats, or is that the point? Tear it down, blow it up, and then remake it for the Democratic Socialists?
I think it's a double-edged sword for the Democrats. In some cases, yes, they are definitely more trouble than they're worth, and I think many Democrats, even very far left Democrats, would agree with that. But on the other side, they need them to rile up the base, to oust Republicans in purple districts, to oust Republicans who voters, are a little weary of their relationship with Trump. So Democrats can't abandon them, because if they abandon them, Democrat primary voters are going to say, well, then we're just going to not vote, or we're going to back even more extreme candidates. So Nancy Pelosi is in a very difficult position because this is not what it was in 2010 for Republicans with the Tea Party. This is not a new wave of people who just want to go back to the original way things were done in government. These are radical people who seek to change the bedrock of American government.
And they want to do it by upending kind of the same. We've seen some of these cries. I've even said them myself. I'll admit, Magdalene, I've said, you know, the establishment wing of the Republicans needs a, you know, overall overhaul, needs changing. And so in doing that, President Trump has really been instrumental in putting a stop to it. Like, not a stop, but implementing this new idea of, look, let's get back to the people. Let's get back to serving constituents. Let's stop, you know, being a part of Washington. Let's stop being a part of the swamp. They want something similar for the Democrats, only it doesn't benefit Americans.
Right. It doesn't benefit America. And I think what has been happening with the left is there is a strange alliance of this form between socialists, people who want to be radical, people who want to upend the bedrock of America, and this alliance isn't strong. It's not even as strong as what you have with establishment and Tea Party Republicans who generally don't want socialism. But this alt-left alliance has made it very difficult for Democrats to govern, because if they don't have that group of primary voters that adhere to the alt-left alliance, they're not going to get reelected.
So we're seeing that with the border wall negotiations, aren't we? Because it wouldn't have been a big deal for Nancy Pelosi to strong-arm the president into opening the government and then give him the money that he's asking for. But now they're stuck between a rock and a hard place where they actually can't say yes because of the people you're talking about.
Yes, they can say yes. And I genuinely think Nancy Pelosi would like to have a good record as Speaker. I think that's always been very important to her. And she's between a rock and a hard place now, because how do you look, you know, the Democrat primary voters in the eye that got you the House and say to them, we're going to give him money for the wall, when that was the rallying cry that got them the House? How do you do that? And then to Democrats like Connor Lamb and people in those districts, how do you look your constituents in the eye and say, we will not compromise on any border security because people like Ocasio-Cortez are now running the show?
So I want to give everybody just I think the most important, and it's been such a good interview, and I want to, if you're just tuning into the show, we are chatting with Magdalene Rose. You can find her on Twitter. She has this amazing tweet feed where you can go through and read some of what she's talking about now and have this to kind of refer back to. You can retweet her. You can also share the information on Facebook. But I want to make sure we're clear. It's an organization that's promoting these hard left Democrats, and their aim is not what we think it is. And if you want to know more about it, you have to follow Magdalene Rose on Twitter. I'm following her. I've retweeted her. Go there and check it out. Thank you for joining the show today. I hope we can have you back to talk more about this.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Talk to you again soon. You know, sometimes when you hear the music, you're like, whoa, I wasn't done. Anyway, we'll be back with your calls, 866-963-2037, right after this.
What does it take to be a sports success and a team player? Here's Pro Football Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy with today's Uncommon Moment.
Hall of Fame wide receiver Tim Brown tells a great story about returning home to Dallas after a standout rookie season and becoming the first wide receiver to win the Heisman Trophy. In his mother's front yard stood a sign that said, "Welcome home, Heisman Trophy winner and Pro Bowler Tim Brown." Tim greeted his mother at the door. When Tim asked why the banner was hung outside, his mom smiled and said, "Because all of this is going to stay outside. When you come inside, you're not going to be that person. You're going to be Timmy, not Tim Brown." Scripture says God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Tim Brown was an uncommon player with even more uncommon humility.
Tony Dungy, best-selling author of Quiet Strength and the Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
My name is Dorian. I finally came to Teen Challenge when the combination of alcohol and my epilepsy medication caused 2 grand mal seizures in one night. But now, because of this program, I've been sober for a year.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
The Christian life is a battle. A wise soldier puts on the whole armor of God so that he is able to stand against the wicked schemes of the devil.
We can have victory over the enemy when we go into the battle, not dependent on our strength, but dependent on the strength of Almighty God.
The Hour of Intercession with Joseph Parker, weekday afternoons at 1 Central on Urban Family Talk.
I'm Chad Pergram with the Speaker's Lobby. Lawmakers have until Friday night at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time to forge an agreement to avoid another government shutdown. There are two major concerns. The first one is time. The House of Representatives has a firm 72-hour rule where they have to post the text of a bill before members can vote on a package. Then there are worries that even if there is an accord, President Trump won't sign the measure. Mr. Trump has gone back on his word before. Senate Appropriations Committee Chairman Richard Shelby had a positive meeting with the president late last week, but everyone wonders if the president will renege as he did in December with the stopgap spending bill. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell felt burned. Generally, lawmakers are optimistic, but one senior source said they were more pessimistic than they had been. Besides President Trump's signature, the other linchpin to a deal is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Lawmakers at the margins, hard left or hard right, probably wouldn't support the deal. They either vehemently oppose the wall or want a wall. But there is a big sweet spot in the middle, a coalition of Democrats and Republicans. And Pelosi knows that a vote for border security is good for her freshman members. With the Speaker's Lobby, Chad Pergram, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I'd like to do a shout out to President Trump because I'm 100% behind him on his deal on the wall and securing the border. You know, he also needs to look at cutting off all the money for sanctuary cities, because all that does is let these illegal aliens back into our society to commit more crimes. And I know President Trump has looked into the eyes of angel dads and angel moms like me. He knows the pain. He knows the hurt that we've gone through. He knows the suffering that is being caused to the American citizens. My question for the House and Congress is, you know, my daughter was hit and she was so badly hurt that they wouldn't even let my wife and I identify the body. Her legs were broken in 8 different places. She's had 5 skull fractures. She had 10 broken ribs and a punctured lung. She died at the scene. You know, that's something that I have to live with and my family has to live with every day. You know, if Miss Pelosi and Mr. Schumer's daughter or son were hit and killed by an illegal alien, I can guarantee you that funding would have been there months ago for this wall and security for our border.
And that's an angel dad talking about losing his daughter to an illegal alien, basically killing her with his car, just destroying her body. And he does make a good point there, and I'm one of those ones where I don't like dragging other people's kids into stuff. Like I don't like it when people say, "Well, if it was your kid, you know, keep those curses to yourself. Don't start with me." But what he's saying, as an example, because he's lost his child, is pretty true. The reason that, you know, a lot of these Democrats who are in leadership, specifically, their children are insulated from this because they are wealthy and they don't live in areas where there are large numbers of illegal aliens. That's worth pointing out. So right now I want to go to the phones. It's always such a pleasure to speak to our guests, which our permanent guests are the callers, listeners who call into the show. And I want to point you one more time. We have to do this. I have to let you know about this, especially for people who are just tuning in. And that's the nature of appointment radio, which this show is, because we're on from 2 to 4 p.m. Central, is that you're coming into the show and you're listening as an appointment, because we're not drive time, not until 3 p.m. So rescue a child, provide a day of safety in India's red light districts. Give now by going to 877-616-2396 or AFR.net. It's 877-616-2396. or AFR.net. We would be so grateful to have you partner with us. $7.08 provides 1 day of safety for a child in Mumbai, India's red light districts. Thank you for that. And India Partners is the organization that provides this wonderful care and safety for these kids. And so we're so excited to partner with them this week and bringing this information to you and asking for your help and support. And so right now, I am really excited to go to the phones. I love chatting with our callers. Jake, thank you for calling the show today.
Thank you, Stacy. I was riding around, and I saw a little bitty short son
that might help the president. I mean, it's 60 seconds. That's all it is. You got enough time?
Yeah. Go ahead.
You got to know when to fold up, know when to walk away, know when to run. Never lean on Nancy Pelosi. Just ask the American people. We'll help you build a wall. How you like that, Stacey?
I gotta say, you have a nice voice there, and I like the putting in of the specific people. I think the president should listen not just to you, but there's millions of Americans who've already given to GoFundMe's. There's, a lot of people who've talked about militias going down and using money that they've gathered to build sections of the wall. There's not a lack of people who want to help. The issue is that we have this government that's so big and so ridiculously large that everything has to go through it. And because of that, then we're stuck when we have people who don't want to work. And that's the Democrats right now. And I know that there are people out there who are, they're church-going good folks. But if you're supporting the Democrats and the Democrats are supporting the lawbreakers, there's something wrong with that picture, Thank you so much for calling in the show and sharing that little song with us. And I like to make up little ditties too. I don't do it anymore, but when the kids were small, I used to make up it was a little jingle. And it was a bedtime jingle that I'd heard that I'd been singing to them. I would basically sing it out at the bottom of the stairs, and then they'd all be in one of their rooms, or they'd be downstairs in the basement playing. And so I would sing the little song, and then they would know it's time to come upstairs and start getting ready for bed. And then I stopped singing it then. I started actually making up new ones. I'd hear a little song or a little commercial during the day, and I'm like, oh, I'm using that music, like the little riff there, and I'm going to have a different one. I even went so far, which you guys will never hear me do this in public, but I used to even do a little rap to get them to go to bed, and my husband would beatbox, and I would do rapping. I only did that a couple times, but they thought that was hilarious because obviously that's just not my natural mode, rapping, stuff like that. Just being honest. So I love jingles. I loved making them up for the kids, and they were really fun. And it does give us a little bit of lightness of heart about an issue that has been so serious and has been it's kind of depressing. I mean, as Christians, we're not supposed to get depressed about these issues. We're supposed to take it all to God in prayer. And we can do that. Doesn't mean that as human beings, we don't still feel the pressure. And that ultimately, it's just such a disgusting situation to have to be in month after month after month. And doing radio, talking about this issue, I remember talking about it when I was on Saturday night radio. Now, after going to Sunday night radio and then Monday through Friday radio for an hour, and now here, it's kind of amazing that it's still the same issue. It's still American kids, wives, husbands, daughters, sons, uncles, aunts, Americans being killed by illegal aliens. And we still have people in Congress who don't want to deal with it, don't want to talk about it, don't want to allow it to be taken care of. So the president actually was tweeting, and we have two stories I want to get to here. First off, the Democrats have actually come out with a couple things that they would like to see in any new deal pertaining to border wall funding. And one of the things that they're looking for, and again, wow, where are we? The Democrats want to limit the number of beds that are available in the United States to house illegal aliens who've been convicted of crimes. Yes, you heard me right. Because you're probably, if you're driving or if you're multitasking, you're like, what'd she say? The Democrats want to say, here's a cap on the number of bed space that you can have for illegal aliens who've committed crimes. So in other words, when we run out of bed space, it's the same as when in California they have prison overpopulation. And when they reach a place where they can't house any more criminals, what they'll do is they'll say, well, we have, let's say, for example, 10 murderers that we need to incarcerate. So we're going to let 10 people who've dealt drugs free so we can put these 10 murderers in. And so people get let out of prison because there's literally not enough room to house everybody. Well, that's the situation we have with illegal aliens who've committed crimes in this country. We don't have enough bed space to house them all the way that they should be housed. In other words, so they can be deported. They have to be housed and they have to have a bed to sleep in at night. We can't just cram them in there where there's more people than there are beds. We have to do things lawfully. So what the Democrats are saying is, let's limit the number of beds that we're paying for, space that we're allocating for illegal aliens who are criminals for deportation. And so if you can't believe that, neither can I. out of all the things they could ask for, out of all of the demands they could make and get the president to agree to for the $5.7 billion, they're going for the criminals? So here's what the president had to say about it. He was actually on Twitter this morning. He says, Democrats do not want us to detain or send back criminal aliens. This is a brand new demand. Crazy! Exclamation point. I already explained exactly what they're asking for. They are proposing, specifically, just to be specific, they're proposing a 16,500 bed cap. Yeah, you heard that right, too. You're probably thinking, how many beds could there be? A couple thousand. 16,500 is the cap they want. And they're trying to hamstring law enforcement into not having enough beds so that people who've committed crimes would just be basically released back out to commit more crimes. They want to turn America into a sanctuary country. Now, the Democrats got a little bit of much-needed advice from President Trump when he tweeted, the Democrats are so self-righteous and angry. Loosen up and have some fun. The country is doing well. Now, he's right about that. And by loosening up and having some fun, what they should do is they should just say, you know what? There's being a part of this party, and there's being an American, and there's being right. And I've got to be right here. And so let me get on the right side of things. You know, all of you guys, you new people, can't unseat all of us. So while we're still in charge, we're going to exercise a little bit of common sense and some power. That's what I wish they would do. So let's go back to the phones. I love it when we have callers. Scott in Tennessee. Hey, thanks for calling the show today.
Hi, Stacey.
Hi.
I want to talk about the wall.
Yeah.
And I don't know, are you aware of Representative Bruce Griffey in Tennessee, 75th District?
I don't, not specifically. What's he proposing?
Well, okay, well, let me tell you what he's done, Stacey. He's introduced legislation in Tennessee to help fund the wall. He's got a co-sponsor, a senator in Tennessee, and he is trying to help the president and help the country by having the states do what they can to be able to get money for the wall and have this thing be diverted around Congress. Somehow or other, you have to talk to him. He's got the details. I've got the bill, but of course he's the representative, and it would get to Homeland Security. And he hopes to be able to spread this through. He's already got some good positive responses from some of the other reps in different states. But to spread this as many different states as possible who could do this kind of thing, this could be a real big push toward the wall. And also, if a lot of people knew in Tennessee that he's trying to get this bill through, the various other districts around the state of Tennessee can contact their representatives to try to push this thing through to make sure it gets through. And it can help the president and help the wall.
I love it. And I want to give a little bit more detail, Scott. It's a $10 fee onto money transfers, which are primarily used, the bulk of them are used by people who are in the country, lawfully and unlawfully, to transfer money to other countries. He would add $10 onto each money transfer. Half would go to state agencies to stop money laundering. The other $5 would go to a fund designated to be given to the federal government to be used for border security. I like it. Thank you for telling me about that. I had no idea he'd proposed that. And I will share a little bit more about that here in just a second. I want to make sure we get to all of our callers. Scott, thanks for calling. Barry in Georgia. Hey, thanks for calling the show today.
Hey, Stacey. Thank you for your service, and thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
And it seems that everyone has forgotten there was a law passed, I believe, in the late 90s for E-Verify, but I believe it became just voluntary, and there was never no teeth put in it. I'm all for the wall, don't get me wrong. We need that wall regardless. But if they would put some teeth into this E-Verify, and if they can verify if you're eligible to buy a gun in just a few minutes, they can decide if you're eligible for employment.
You got it.
And that seems to just have been forgotten.
Well, because the Democrats really oppose it, too.
I urge everyone to call their representative, their senator. Let's put some teeth in E-Verify that these large, even smaller companies, that they'll be held accountable, and it will be expensive for them if they're not using E-Verify.
Yeah, and they could designate the funds from the fines to border protection. Oh, the Democrats would oppose that. They do oppose putting teeth into E-Verify. They're the ones who took the teeth out of it when it was passed. Thanks, Barry. That's a great idea, too. Now, in the interest of sharing all the information, WTVF reports that a Tennessee state representative has proposed this plan. His name is Representative Bruce Griffey. He's a Republican from Paris, Tennessee. And he said the fees would only be applied to money transferred from Tennessee people who are transferring money to Mexico. However, the bill is much broader, and at its introduction included money being sent to a location within the United States or a location abroad with no mention of Mexico. So clearly, you know, he would be tweaking the bill a little bit. I'm not sure about that part, but he wanted to take away the whole idea that it has to be funded, the wall and border security has to be funded at the federal level, and he's encouraging other states to take the same action. It's such a good idea, mainly because states do have the ability to implement a tax on transfers, on these money transfers. It's really, and if you've ever used them before, if you've ever had a relative send you a Western Union or what have you, you know, it's so easy. You just walk up and you fill out this form, you use your debit card or your credit card to pay, and then they transfer the money to another location. And now they've got it fixed up so that I don't even think you have to go to like the grocery store or a Western Union storefront. You can actually do the transfers via the computer, which means this is something, it's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry for Americans and people living in America to transfer funds to other countries. And sometimes it's as simple as a mom and dad transferring money to a child who's lost their debit card on, their junior, senior trip abroad, or parents transferring money to kids who are on spring break in another country, or you're transferring money to relatives who live in another country. It's really, the reasons run the gamut, but it's so important to note that this is an untapped source of billions of dollars in funds. Funding the wall is not the issue. Yes, we're fighting over funding it through Congress, but we don't have to. There's so much money flying through the air, literally just flying overhead, that we could take a penny off of. We don't need $10. We could take a penny off every remittance in this country and build 50 walls if we wanted to. That's how much money is being transferred. 1/3 of Mexico's GDP is transfers from the United States. Does that answer why they let the caravans through? They like what's going on. They like the illegal immigration. So that's hour one. Thank you so much for being with us today. God bless you from the heartland. And don't forget to give at afr.net to India Partners.
Urban Family Talk.
There's a lot happening around us. That's why Christians need to stand strong on family values and morality. Hi, I'm Ray Rooney, editor of The Stand, a blog from the American Family Association. The Stand has timely, carefully written articles on relevant cultural issues that you can quickly forward to others. Visit afa.net/The Stand.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. A new wrinkle in the border security debate is increasing the likelihood of another partial government shutdown. Fox's Jared Halpern has more from Capitol Hill.
House and Senate negotiators hit a standstill over the weekend with just days to prevent another government shutdown Friday night. While President Trump is demanding $5.7 billion for border wall construction, Republicans and Democrats in Congress are in an impasse over ICE detention policy. Democrats want to cap the number of detention beds afforded the Immigration Enforcement Agency to focus on removing dangerous criminals. President Trump accuses Democrats of not wanting to detain or send back criminal aliens, calling it a brand new demand and crazy.
Amazon is now rethinking its decision to place half of its headquarters in New York City. Fox's Deirdre Bolton has more from the Big Apple.
People who are in favor of Amazon's plan say 25,000 jobs added to the local economy has to be worth something. Governor Cuomo firmly in that camp.
For the state Senate to oppose Amazon was governmental malpractice.
Critics of the plan say that a company like Amazon should not be getting close to $3 billion in tax subsidies from the city and the state. I spoke with an assemblyman of the 40th district, Ron Kim.
Amazon is a company that we shouldn't be supporting at all in terms of subsidies or corporate giveaways. None of that should be going to a mega monopoly like Amazon, period.
In Long Island City, Queens, Deirdre Bolton, Fox News.
The suspect in last October's shooting massacre at a Pittsburgh synagogue has pleaded not guilty to dozens of charges in the case. However, Robert Bauer's new attorney is signaling the accused gunman might be open to a plea deal. Donna Kufel is a member of Congregation Dor Hadash, which occupies space at the synagogue where the shooting happened. She explains why she attended the court proceedings.
We have to be present and strong and not afraid, and make ourselves be known as human beings, all of us, in this process.
Authorities say Bowers gunned down 11 people at the Tree of Life Synagogue when he attacked on Saturday, October 27th, during services. Another 7 people were wounded. Bowers is facing dozens of charges, but prosecutors in Pittsburgh have not yet said if they will pursue the death penalty. Denver public school teachers went on strike today over contract disputes. School Superintendent Susanna Cordova says most schools remained open and are being staffed by substitute teachers.
Definitely have heard concerns that the lessons aren't what their teachers were working on. I get that. Like, it's really challenging anytime your teacher is gone to have a substitute pick up and do the exact same work. In the cases where teachers left lesson plans, our subs will definitely try to use those lesson plans as well.
The teachers union says its biggest issue is over how pay is calculated. In world news this hour, a Syrian war monitor and a Kurdish news agency are reporting intense fighting between the Islamic State terrorist group and U.S.-backed fighters in eastern Syria. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says the push by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces has been slow due to landmines, snipers, and suicide car bombs used by the terrorists. Hoping to counter immigration, Hungary is offering tax breaks for a baby boom. Simon Owen reports from London.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban announcing that women who have at least 4 children will be exempt for life from paying income tax. They'll also be offered cheaper cars and low-interest loans. The measures are aimed at reversing Hungary's declining birth rate and, the Prime Minister says, countering migration. He says this is the Hungarians' answer, not immigration. Orban is an outspoken critic of mass immigration to Europe from the Middle East.
And official figures show that Britain's economy slowed last year to its weakest growth rate since the global financial crisis, as mounting uncertainty over so-called Brexit weighed on businesses and kept a lid on their investments. Find more news at OneNewsNow.com. Thanks for listening.
Chris Brooks. We cannot underestimate the responsibility of evangelism. That is why shows like this, Equipped, which is committed to equipping you every day to live, share, and defend your faith, are extremely important, because anyone who does not confess Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior is outside of God's saving grace.
Equipped. Weekdays at noon Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The president is going down to El Paso. He wants to take the case directly to an area that would be affected positively if his view of legal and safe immigration and a physical barrier wall would come to fruition.
You asked me a question. Is a shutdown entirely off the table? The answer is no.
Every negotiation, almost every negotiation out there hits bumps in the roads. There are bumps in the road, but as long as we stay focused in a bipartisan way, bicameral way, to get this done, I'm hopeful we can get it done. Is it a done deal? No, it isn't. And we could end up in a train wreck, which happened before. But I don't think anybody has an appetite for a government shutdown.
I'll say 50-50 we get a deal. I hope and pray we do.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being here today. We are so excited. Our next guest and next segment, second segment of this hour, we will be speaking with Dan Gaynor from Media Research Center. And he's going to come on and talk to us about it. This is absolutely fascinating. The kinds of things we're seeing on local and, well, it's not local, it's cable television. 33 separate entertainment programs that attack conservative values and or President Donald Trump while promoting a hardcore progressive agenda. It's not just that we're seeing this on the news, because we focus on that a lot here on this program. It's that we're seeing it everywhere. It's literally, you turn the TV on, they're making fun of President Trump. They're mainstreaming this kind of hate-filled ideological pit warfare. And what is the answer to it? I mean, if you're like us, we've turned off cable television. We're unplugged. We have been for years. But that doesn't mean millions of Americans aren't just accepting this in as whole cloth. And what's so interesting about it is if you listen to the videos, if you go to Campus Reform right now, they have another cool video up. I posted it and linked it on the Facebook page. They've got a video up where they ask the teenagers that are walking around, college students, hey, are you with the Democrats' new Green Deal? And they're like, yeah, we are. We do like that. We want to see change. We want to see the environment improved. Then when you tell them no more airplanes, replace all the housing in the country, no more fossil fuels, no more oil, none of that. They're like, well, wait, that's kind of extreme in 10 years. How can we get that done? Why would we want to get rid of airplanes in 10 years? They immediately start saying no. Now, the easy thing would be to just say, hey, guess what? You'll have no Starbucks. And they would immediately say, no. Because it's not just Starbucks. It's all of the different modern, customized economic options that people really love. But if we're really, really focused on this, it's just an information sharing type of an exercise. And not arguing with each other, but just saying, hey, do you know that when they say the Green New Deal, they mean you have to give up these things? Then people are like, wait, I don't want to give that stuff up. And speaking of giving things up, how about giving up your First Amendment? This story is out of Great Britain, but this is exactly what path we're on here in this country. Thank God for the Constitution, but it hasn't protected people like the baker up in the Northwest and the pizza shop owners. The First Amendment protects our speech against the government, but when we see individuals infringing on free speech and rights and they have to defend themselves in court, you may win in the end, but if you're forced to pay all of the fees for that and you lose your business, you've really lost, right? This is what's happening with this lady. She's 38 years old. She has a 10-year-old child who's autistic and then a little baby. And she was on Twitter. And she was tweeting back and forth with a transgendered man. So it's transgender woman when the man wants to be a woman and is living as a woman. So it's a transgendered woman. And she said, you're a man. Again, because I know you're thinking, sometimes you got to be listening to the show and going, what? It's true. What I'm telling you is true. This story is over on The Right Scoop. And I love going there every day to see the reporting that they have. And this idea that you can't call someone what you see with your own two eyes, it's already here. That's why you see the stories about people losing their mind and yelling and threatening violence when they're misgendered. When someone misgenders another person. And I can tell you, I'm 6 feet tall, 6 feet 2 inches actually. And so being really tall, I have had store clerks, they don't even look up. They're just, setting up their bags for the next person. And they're like, can I help you, sir? And then they look up and they see me and they're like, oh, sorry, ma'am. I don't sue anybody if that happens. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but it has happened. I don't think the person is intentionally doing it. And even if they were, their words are not going to have a lasting impact on me. It's not like they're, on my Facebook page leaving bad reviews trying to destroy my reputation there. So here's this story. It's this 38-year-old mom, and the Daily Mail is the one reporting this. This mother was at home, and her children were home. The police come over, ask her some questions, and arrest her. 3 officers detained Kate Scottow at her home and then took her to the police station to ask her questions about her argument on Twitter with an activist on the platform. What they call it is dead naming. She's from Hitchin, Hertfordshire. She had her photograph, DNA, and fingerprints taken and remains under investigation. More than 2 months after her arrest on December 1st, she has had neither her mobile phone or laptop returned, which she says are hampering her studies for a master's in forensic psychology. Writing in an online forum in Mumsnet, Mrs. Scottow said she's also been served with a court order that bans her from referring to her accuser as a man. So they've actually wasted the time that it takes to create a court order to stop her from calling him a man. So if she just saw him in person and said, "Excuse me, sir," she'd be in violation of a court order. That's the kind of totalitarianism they're living under in Great Britain. She says she was detained for 7 hours in a cell with no sanitary products, which she needed. She was then interviewed and released and told, "You're under investigation." And this is all for misgendering someone on Twitter. And what's so funny about it is you could even see the loony left saying, "Yeah, you misgendered them in person," kind of like a verbal assault. But we're talking about just right there, like on online social media. Now, I'm pretty sure they don't say you're going to be arrested if you say something awful to a conservative. But they do if you are attacking one of their protected groups. And the protected groups nowadays, well, obviously at the top of the heap are illegal aliens, refugees, and people who are mentally ill and think they're trapped in the body of another sex. So I want to now turn to this story about Governor Northam, which is still in the news, and now he's taken to going to the big Sunday morning shows to explain himself. And he was being interviewed by Gayle King, and I have two little bits on this. The story is now completely about his comments surrounding the blackface incident. The KKK guy in the blackface, it was a white person dressed in a Sambo outfit, and that was in his yearbook. And so what people want to do is make the story about that. And I admit it's odd and kind of flabbergasting. But the real story is what he said about laying a newborn infant on a table and making it comfortable while the mother and the doctor decided whether or not to kill the baby. That's the real shock and awe here. But all we're hearing about is this stuff. I want you to hear this. It's number 2.
I know this has been a very difficult week for you in the state of Virginia, so where would you like to begin?
Well, it has been a difficult week, and you know, if you look at Virginia's history, we're now at the 400-year anniversary. Just 90 miles from here, in 1619, the first indentured servants from Africa landed on our shores in Old Point Comfort, what we call now Fort Monroe. And while
also known as slavery.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, point of order here. He's talking about the indentured servants who the very first black people brought to this country were indentured servants. And they were forced to work for free and then were released and were free. So they were only enslaved as indentured servants for a period of time. They would work off their so-called debt and then they would be free. But between the time that he's talking about and where slavery became so profitable that the South could not survive without it, the colonies couldn't survive without it, that's when full-blown slavery was instituted in the colonies. The point that he is actually factually accurate about the time frame that he's speaking of still belies this problem that he has where he continues to make these incorrect statements or statements that are very incendiary about racial topics. And I kind of almost feel like, and I have zero proof, I don't know this guy, I haven't interviewed him, but I feel like it's to his benefit to keep the thread going about racism because he's a Democrat and he can eventually survive this story. It is not good for him to keep the thread going or keep defending his comments on infanticide because that is something that Democrats and Republicans alike are opposed to. So which of the two scandals do you pick if you're Governor Northam? Do you choose to talk about your comments on infanticide and continue to defend killing newborn babies? Or do you choose to talk about racism and show yourself to be eminently more knowledgeable about the minutia of the founding of our country and racism and just continue to talk about how you want to, in his words, he wants to be, Virginia needs a doctor, a healer. They need someone with a moral foundation. The same guy who said we leave a baby on the table, make it comfortable, and then discuss whether or not to kill it, he says he's got a moral foundation that's good for Virginians. Don't take it from me. Here he is in number 4.
We have worked very hard. We've had a good first year, and I'm a leader. I've been in some very difficult situations, life and death situations, taking care of sick children. And right now,
you're a doctor, yeah.
Right now, Virginia needs someone that can heal. There's no better person to do that than a doctor. Virginia also needs someone who is strong, who has empathy, who has courage, and who has a moral compass. And that's why I'm not going anywhere. I have learned from this. I have a lot more to learn, but we're in a unique opportunity now. Again, the 400-year anniversary of the history, whether it be good or bad, in Virginia, to really make some impactful changes.
No slavery in this country.
Yes.
I can't get over him saying that he has a lot to learn, but he's learned a lot, but in the end, he has a moral compass. What part of a moral compass makes you, he didn't just say he would make a baby comfortable on the table and the mom and the doctor would decide whether or not to kill it. He also defended his comments and basically glossed over them as if to say, you know, this is what we believe here in the state of Virginia. This is who we are. This is what I believe. And I'm a neurologist, and so I can tell you I'm right and you're wrong. If we want to, we'll have babies, and when the babies are had, then we'll decide whether or not they get to live. You know, that's our choice. And he's the one with the moral center. This is the kind of lunacy that we're putting up with in politics today. And the people of Virginia are actually arguing amongst themselves about what is more beneficial for them. Do they keep this guy on because he's a Democrat and they can rely on him to keep infanticide and abortion lawful in their state? Or do they get rid of him because he deserves it because he dressed up in blackface or a Klan outfit, we're not sure which, back when he was a little younger? Hold him to the same standard they hold everyone else to. I mean, it's stunning that this is the conversation that's being had. But that's what, if you go, just type his name in and read the tweets, advocacy organizations in the state of Virginia are arguing tooth and nail that this man has to stay, and so does the guy who's accused of sexual assault, and the third guy who just dressed up as Michael Jackson, which I'm not even sure why he's lumped in with the rest. It's not racial to dress up as someone who's a star or a singer if you're not the same ethnic background as them. That's not racism. It's racism if you're mocking and you're doing it in the black tar paint because it's Sambo. I mean, we got to have some kind of delineation as to which behaviors are actually racist, or everything's racist, which means nothing is. If you've seen The Incredibles, you get that reference. Let's go to the phones. We have Jimmy in Tennessee. Hey, got a quick minute left. What's your comment?
Hey, real quick, it's just refreshing, first of all, to hear someone just speak the truth.
Oh, thanks.
Do you think, what kind of percent of the black vote do you think Trump might get in 2020? I'm hoping that it's going to be close to 50% because he's creating jobs and wealth, and that's what we all need. Whites, blacks, Asians, everybody.
It is. You're right, Jimmy. I would think it would be 50% because of the economic boom as well. Also because he's fighting for American jobs by trying to reduce the number of people who are here illegally, stealing jobs from the working class people. And blacks are a part of the working class people in America. But you're discounting the Democrats' power. They have CNN, MSNBC, and they just call the president a racist all the time for no reason, because he's obviously not a racist. I'm hoping for 20%, to be honest with you. He had 16% of the black male vote last time. I think he could do 20% this time. That's what I'm hoping for. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Dan Gaynor, VP of Business and Culture for MRC. Stay right there.
Hello, I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, on our Spiritual Heritage Tour of Washington, D.C., we go to the Supreme Court. That's one of the places we go on day one, and we visit the inside chambers. We go to where the justices sit, and it's an amazing place to visit, the Supreme Court of the United States. We don't just look at the outside, we go to the inside and see where the justices sit and where oral arguments are heard. So that's just one of the places we visit on one of the days. We're in Washington, D.C., and we also go to Mount Vernon, the home of George and Martha Washington. So we're going in September. June's full. September will be filling up soon. If you want more information on this Spiritual Heritage Tour, go to spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
In a recent PragerU video, former Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper talked about two different types of people. He described these two groups in order to explain why Donald Trump won in 2016. I'll ignore his explanation and conclusion in this short commentary in order to focus on the impact of two people groups. He says there are many people who can live anywhere and many more people who have to live somewhere. David Goodhart makes this important distinction in his book, The Road to Somewhere. He explains that this is a key fault line in Britain between the anywheres and the somewheres. Stephen Harper believes this explains the populace rising in many countries, including the United States. He says, imagine you work for an international bank, computer company, or consulting firm. You wake up in New York, London, or Singapore and feel at home. Your work is not threatened by import competition or technological dislocation. You're one of those who can live anywhere. This is not the case for those who are forced to live somewhere. He says, let's say you're a factory worker, a small business person, or in retail sales. If things go badly at your company or policy choices by politicians turn out to be wrong, you can't just shift your life to somewhere else. Turns out that the anywheres are not really that affected by outsourcing, labor, cheap labor, or even technological imports. The somewheres are affected by all of these things and have become angry when the elites in government, media, and business seem unconcerned about the disruptions that occur because of policies by government officials and decisions by multinational companies. That is why more and more somewheres are making their voice heard in elections and in the populist movement. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey, welcome back to the program. Thank you for being here today. We are really excited to have our next guest come on and join us. It's Dan Gaynor. He's the Vice President of Business and Culture for Media Research Center. Dan, thank you for joining the show today.
Oh, it's always good to talk to you, Stacy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, it's good to talk to you, but it's kind of infuriating what you're here to share. And
that's sort of the nature of what we do for a living. It's always good to catch up with people, and then the things that we have to do, the things that we have to dig through. It's like swimming through a sewer, and then some days it's even worse than that.
It is. It's like swimming through the sewer, and you look over, and I'm like, "Oh, Dan, hi." You're like, "Stacy."
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I think we've gone far enough on that analogy.
Yeah. No, it's getting kind of gross, but it's appropriate.
It's just dealing with the media the way it is now in our country is that it's so anti-conservative. I mean, they've always had an agenda against the right. They've always had an agenda, for the last 50 years, they always had an agenda against Christians. This is not news, I think, to the people listening to this program. When the Bible movies generally went away in the 1960s and Charlton Heston stopped playing Moses and such, Hollywood made a sharp left turn and has just been heading out into Never Never Land ever since. And so we've decided, I've been kicking this around. We've been working, my team, we've been working with culture stuff for 10 years now. And we always have a hard time coming up with numbers. So we decided we're going to tally, and every month we're going to try to expand out on this, look and see what TV shows attack the right. And so our first try at this ends up with 33 different TV shows. This doesn't count news. It's just entertainment, or so to speak, TV shows in the month of January. 33 separate programs attacking the right. You think Hollywood's got it in for us? That's the reality.
So when you're talking about attacking, it's one thing for them to have, let's say, a show that is anti the ideas that we're talking about. But we're not talking about just a little, blithe references to ideas or general admonishments for types of thought. We're talking about specific attacks on people who live or alive today, like the Pence family, Donald Trump and his family, and the attacks are open, and they're not normal attacks. They're not about his ideas or the policies. They're personal. They're sometimes sexual in nature. They're vile, disgusting attacks on television.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's without going into detail, and that's how bad most of the stuff is. We have a video posted on our website, and it's a not rated video. We're going to put anything in these videos that they put because we have to. Not going to hide how awful they are, but to make sexual jokes about the vice president and the second lady, that's just beyond the pale. To celebrate Donald Trump, a character playing Donald Trump, having a heart attack, to joke about Trump and avoiding getting AIDS and things like that. This is hate. If we saw this in any other culture other than the United States, targeting any group of people, the UN would comment on it. Well, of course, it was Jewish people because they hate them. But the UN would comment on groups. All these global human rights groups would go, oh, well, you can't. We're worried about the venom that you have, complaining about Christians in America. Yep, they're not. They don't care. And so we have turned from being a very pro-Christian country to an anti-Christian country overnight. And people listening to this program better understand that no matter where you are in this country, even if you're still in a place where Christians aren't targeted on a national level, on schools, in college campuses, on TV, on radio, pop music, wherever you are, the popular culture is attacking you, your faith, your beliefs, who you are. You're supposed to feel guilty for who you are, for everything about your life. That's the popular culture now.
And we talk often, Dan, about this so you'll say on CNN, on MSNBC. We'll talk about it on college campuses where, college professors don't allow any dissension on climate change or evolution or even really basic scientific topics. They've kind of changed the answers so that every answer is evolution. And if you even answer something that was really mainstream 5 years ago, they'll say, that's wrong. And you would literally take, points off for answering the correct answer because you don't connect it to evolution. But, and Americans are used to hearing that. But Dan, you're talking about something totally different now because cable TV is purchased and, it's used by all Americans. It's not like cable TV is marketed towards people who are only Democrats or that only Democratic households have cable. We're talking about people paying money to have their own faith and belief system torn down every night on every channel.
And it's maybe even worse than that. I mean, it's not just torn down. They are being targeted. The left loves to talk about hate speech. Well, by their definition, everything they're doing here is hate speech. Everything they're doing here is so radical and insane. There's this one show where they were celebrating abortion, and one of the characters had an abortion, and the guy buys her flowers to celebrate. Nothing says happy abortion like a bouquet. I mean, who writes this kind of vile garbage? But, I mean, that's one of the few things that we highlight I can actually say on radio. I mean, one of the scenes had Donald Trump, having relations with a woman in the bathroom of a plane, and then having a heart attack in the plane, and the flight attendant, who apparently I think we're supposed to think is gay, seemed very happy that, I love my job. That's how they view us now. If we have heart attacks, if we die, they're happy about it. That's certainly Hollywood. That is the Hollywood we have today. And that Hollywood, whether you watch those movies or you watch those TV shows or listen to that music, that Hollywood is raising your kids. Because the second your kids leave the home, they're looking at videos on YouTube. They are talking to their friends. Even if they don't have a phone, they're looking at their friends' videos. They're listening to the music. And they are being indoctrinated just like you would in a re-education camp.
So the big, like the takeaway here is for parents, first of all, don't assume that because your kids aren't talking about this, they're not absorbing it. So you have to kind of initiate those conversations and say, look, have you seen this? What'd you think about it? Have you heard this? What'd you think about it? I know you like this person's music. Have you ever heard the way she talks about the president? What do you think about that? It's not so much about saying don't listen to it or don't agree with it. It's asking them what they think about it and getting their opinion, and then initiating a conversation where they can trust you to just listen to what they have to say and ask the questions so they can kind of think through the conclusion. And I'm someone, so I never knew, you and I are in the same kind of bracket there age-wise, where I never knew what the politics were of the people that I listened to music. Like I didn't care. I just listened to their music and that was it. Especially in high school and my early 20s, anybody I was listening to musically, I had no idea what they thought politically. And it was the same for people that I followed. Like if I watched the Grammys or the Oscars, I never thought about who they were politically. Now that's all there is. They're all declaring and picking a side. And most of these people that are making the entertainment content are on the left.
Or they're representing on the left, which isn't necessarily the same thing. But look what happened with Rob Lowe just over the weekend. Rob Lowe made a joke about Elizabeth Warren, a pretty funny joke, at how she would bring a new slant to the if she won president, she'd be a new slant to Commander in Chief. That playing off her falsely claiming she's Native American. Well, he got so much pushback, he had to end up deleting it. So if you even represent it all as not left wing, the mob forms and Hollywood gets mad at you and you have to back off. So that what they've got is a self-reinforcing system of propaganda that is tailored to make America and to make your own children hate you. And you know what? If you get cable, you're paying for it. Because even if you don't watch the stations that are like this, you don't watch MSNBC or Comedy Central or the broadcast networks or HBO or get Hulu or whatever, if you pay for cable, you're paying for the channels that come on in your package. And you're paying what's called the carriage fee. So I commend you. You were just saying that what parents should do is engage their kids. I've been saying this for years. I agree with you 1,000%. Because what happens is, I think a lot of us think, oh, okay, well, if we don't let it be seen in our home, children won't watch it outside. And they're wrong. Children are going to be exposed to the secular media sooner or later. You're better off engaging them, asking them, saying, by the way, you see how they depicted Christians in that show? You know that's you. They're attacking you. They're attacking me. They're attacking your grandparents and your brother and your sister. That's how Hollywood views you when they attack you. So bear that in mind when you're watching these shows. And it's possible to watch something and laugh about it. I mean, but we both probably have our programs and our movies that might be like that. But not all of it is vicious or hard hitting. When you just outright call people, the things that they say now about us, and then you look back at history and you look at how groups were marginalized and how they were treated, they weren't called anything this bad.
Not at all. And the point that you're making about connecting it up, I can't stress it enough. What most kids think is when they're consuming that and they hear these things, they're like, wow, so they're talking about President Trump and they don't like it, but it's kind of, President Trump is kind of removed from all of us. I mean, let's face it, he's the president of the United States. We're not going to bump into him tonight at the grocery store. Most of us are never going to meet him or even be in the room that he's in, like be in the same place. But if you connect it the way you just did, Dan, to basically, yeah, they hate Donald Trump, but they also hate his voters. They think everyone who voted for him is a racist. And they especially hate the Christians in that group because they feel like the Christians are the ones who are standing between them and the complete realization of their progressive utopia. And the progressive utopia is what killed hundreds of millions of people last century when they tried to implement it as socialism and communism all over the world. When you start to connect it up like that, and it doesn't have to be a rant. It doesn't have to be, an oppressive 20-minute, you telling all these facts to your kid and your kid sitting there thinking, I got to get away from my mom. She's freaking out. It's more of a conversation, but it's also something that when you see it pop up, when you're listening to the radio and you hear the person say the demon Trump or whatever, you just say, did you notice that? They're attacking him again, but they don't have to do that. They're just segueing to another song. Why are they even bringing up President Trump? Or why are they blaming President Trump for things that are happening to Democrats in leadership in Virginia? When the stories come up and they say they're discussing it at school, you can ask them what they said. You can ask them what the teacher said, and then you can share what your opinion is. You can ask them what their opinion is, and it can be laid back and low key where they can absorb something and move on. Because you're right, Dan. The thing that I find most disturbing is how little parents actually know about what their kids watch and listen to. But your kids can't be shocked by it if they're listening to it at your house, which is why we cut the cord. It was a few reasons, but we cut the cord years ago. And I can tell you, if you don't have it on at your house, when they see it at someone else's house, they're shocked by it, because it's the lack of exposure that makes it so obvious and glaring. If they're hearing it at your house, why would they not believe it's true? If they can sit at home and listen to people tear down the president at your house, why should they think it's not true? They're going to believe it's true. You're paying for it. You're allowing it in your own home.
Yeah, and there are something like 500 or more scripted TV shows now. And that counts Amazon and Hulu and Netflix and all this other stuff. And overwhelmingly, these either are some way or another slipping in something attacking the right. Well, we don't have the resources to watch all 500, so we're trying to develop procedures to expand the list of what we look at each month and how we do this. But think about that. It's all the late night shows every single month. It is Bill Maher every single month. It's Comedy Central shows every single month. It is, some of this is predictable. And you think about it, there are no conservative talk shows on broadcast, no conservative talk shows on HBO or Showtime or anything like that. All these networks, and now they've got a Beto O'Rourke show they're going to have, and Barack Obama's connected to, I think it's
Netflix.
Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to conquer a country from within, you would basically take over academia, which kindergarten through college, and indoctrinate kids the whole time, which we have right now. You would take over the news media so that you could spin every event your way, and you would take over entertainment media because Andrew Breitbart was right, and all things in politics are downstream of culture. And we've got all of that. So if we don't push back, if we don't respond, if we don't alert our kids and alert ourselves, and that means parents, I'm sorry about this, but you got to join us in the sewer. You got to learn about this stuff.
Yeah. And when you get here, it's shocking at first, but then once you're aware of it, it's funny. I'll tell you what, Dan, I've always been concerned that because of what I do, there might be bleed over where the kids are kind of turned off from it and instinctually, run to the other side. But because I've been open about what I do, and, I've had to shield them from the roughest parts, but most of it, they know what's going on. They'll send me a story and say, have you seen this? Pretty interesting, isn't it? It's engaging them as people. And we can do that because they're our people, they're our kids, and they need us to do it because the onslaught is so strong. Dan Gaynor, VP of Business and Culture, MRC TV, thank you for what you're doing over there. And, I'll talk to you again soon.
Well, we'll be doing this each month, so I'll talk to you maybe next month about it.
Perfect. Let's talk then. Dan Gaynor, good to talk to you. We'll be back with more right after this. Stay there. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Christians, where are you? New York State's legislature just passed a bill making all forms of abortion legal up to birth by doctors and non-doctors. The bloodthirsty death worshippers then went on to light up the World Trade Center in pink to celebrate. Meanwhile, Planned Parenthood's annual report shows the abortion giant doing 11,000 more abortions than the prior reporting year and performing fewer women's health care screenings, all while turning a multi-million-dollar profit. In the natural, it looks as if taxpayer-funded abortion is here to stay. But what does God's word say? If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. America needs our prayers. Christians, the Bible is talking to you. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
Hi, I'm Josh. If I could have seen a before and after picture of me as a meth addict, I would have never tried the drug. There was no end to this vicious cycle until a judge sent me a teen challenge. I feel good and I love life.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
Just as David's mighty man Benaiah chased down a lion into a pit on a snowy day, Lion Chasers champions uncommon men and women of faith who are unafraid to stand up and speak truth to power in these dark and evil days. Never before has there been such a need for people of faith to draw a line in the sand with the sword of truth. Lion Chasers, the intersection of faith and public policy with Lonnie Poindexter. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Donald Trump's America.
Only days remain for Congress to come up with a border security compromise to keep government open. Democratic Senator John Tester said on Fox News Sunday he feels there will be an agreement
that deals with detention beds, with barriers, with technology, with the challenges we have on the southern border in a common sense way.
But Democrats say they won't fork over nearly $6 billion for a border barrier. GOP Senator Lindsey Graham on Fox's Sunday Morning Future says he'd encourage the president to
take somewhere near $2 billion for the wall, sign a bill that would give you that much money as a down payment, and find the rest of the money on your own.
Perhaps through a national emergency declaration. Meanwhile, there's another 2020 challenger as Democrat Amy Klobuchar chose a snowy Minnesota day
to announce my candidacy for President of the United States.
She joins 4 other U.S. senators in the 2020 race. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
You know, if Tom and I and the group that was up at Camp David, including Mick Mulvaney, were left to our own devices, we would have solved it in less than a day. And if Mick Mulvaney were president, we could have solved it. The problem is, and it's just the same way it was in 2013 for us, we have people of goodwill and intelligence and thoughtfulness who actually can negotiate all these things very easily. But then the outside world intervenes. And again, it's not just President Trump or Nancy Pelosi. It's also, the right-wing media, left-wing organizations. We have so many outside pressures that make it very, very difficult for us to come to a logical compromise and then sell it. And I don't know the answer to that, but we could have gotten it done this weekend.
Don't you wish that's what would happen? At some points, you just feel like you're exhausted. Welcome back to the program. Stacey Washington, host of Stacey on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. And I want to point you to our partnership this week. We are partnered up with India Partners, rescuing a child. We're providing a day of safety in India's red light districts. $7.08 brings a day of safety, and we're looking for 1,000 days of safety for today. And we've made a nice dent in that goal, but we need your help to see it through. And so I would so appreciate if you'd partner with us, 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or head over to afr.net. That's afr.net, and you can see what we're doing, it's just so easy to click through over there and get it done. And so great to have Dan Gaynor on last segment. He did, so you have to go to mrctv.com or go to newsbusters.org and find his piece. And the reason I'm pointing you to it is because he mentioned that there were some things that he couldn't mention on the air. And he's right. They're not topics appropriate for good Christian radio, but I would love it if you'd read what they were able to tally up. 33 separate entertainment programs that attack conservative values and or President Trump. It's not that you can't dislike the president or attack him, but can you imagine a television show making innuendo about the personal, intimate lives of President Obama and his wife? A television show. I'm not talking about some crazy rant person on Facebook or Twitter, someone with 300 followers who's like, off the rails. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about mainstream television broadcasting into millions of homes, innuendo about the intimate lives of the President of the United States and his wife. Do you think that would have happened to President Obama? We know what trolls were able to do online Twitter. I'm talking about mainstream television. And the reason I'm reiterating that is because invariably I always get someone who reaches out to me and says, you're always bringing up Obama. Is it that you feel like he can't be discussed now that he's not the president anymore? Now that he works for Netflix, we're supposed to just ignore that he was ever there? The comparison is appropriate. I remember hearing a lot about President Bush when President Obama was in office. It was, oh, Bush this, Bush that. The first 3 years of President Obama's presidency, he didn't take responsibility for anything. Anything that went wrong.
Well, that was George Bush's fault. George Bush was the reason why that happened to me. The American people are suffering because of George Bush.
That's what would happen. And I just got so tired of it. I was like, so George Bush is still the president. Then he finally got off that kick, and now we can't mention him at all in comparison to the treatment that President Trump is getting. I mean, you can hate him all you want. Don't blame me, though. I never hated President Obama. I never hated him. I never made personal remarks about him. And I certainly didn't criticize his wife's looks, appearance, gender, none of that stuff. I didn't engage in it. I felt like the policy positions were more than enough for me to cover. I could go all the time with the policies that he was espousing, the things he was doing with his pen and his phone. So it's perfectly fine for Americans to be upset with President Trump's border wall positions or whatever. It's you don't like economic prosperity? Yeah, go ahead and talk about it. You think we'd be better off if we were practicing socialism? All this extra money floating around and the business opportunities too much for you? Go ahead. Talk about how you don't like it. But to say that somehow you have to go after the minor son, the little boy who still lives at the White House with his parents, or the wife. I didn't like it when it was Michelle Obama. I didn't like it when it was Mrs. Bush, Laura Bush. I don't like it when the wives get attacked. They were already married to their husbands before they decided to run for the presidency. And there's no one whose husband has actually been elected to the presidency. You're not going to find a time where Michelle Obama in books or anywhere else says, and so I fought him as hard as I could because I just didn't think he could be the president or that he should be the president. One of the prerequisites for a man becoming the president of the United States is that his wife is not only fully on board, but that she must deep down believe that her husband could actually be the president. They have to already have seen it in their husband for the husband to say, I want to go do this. Because there's no man alive who's married who wants to go after becoming the president of the United States with a wife who's only 10% in or who's all the way not in favor of it. It's just not the way it works. The only way it works for you to run for the presidency is if you are married to someone who believes that you could be the president of the United States, probably more than you do. They have to believe it more than you because you're going to get weak and faint and feel exhausted by the prospect and really need the encouragement. And that's when your wife steps in. That's what wives do. And they put that healing hand on the shoulder and look into your eyes and say, you're doing this. We've already committed to this. You're already on your way to doing this. Whether you end up winning or not, if you're going to make a run for it, your wife has to be all in. So I don't see why anybody would think it's appropriate to criticize a woman who is supporting her husband in attaining a dream that he has for himself and for their family. It's really, the question is, what do you think she's doing? Do you think she's somehow kicking against the pricks and totally against him doing what he's doing because that's what a good wife would do? Any man whose wife is that far against it, Mitch Daniels. Mitch Daniels is an example of what happens when a man, his wife is against it. Mitch Daniels was one of the people that in the Republican Party had been discussed numerous times as being someone who might become the president of the United States, that he would possibly run and had a good chance of winning because of his performance as governor. And he was really well liked within the party. But in their past, at some point in their marriage, when their kids were smaller, they have 2 daughters, the wife got entangled in an affair with a man and left Mitch Daniels and their daughters. She ran away with this man and was gone for a while. I don't mean a couple of weeks or a couple of months. I mean a lengthy period of time. After that whole episode, Mitch Daniels and his wife eventually reconciled and came back together as a real marriage, married, husband and wife. And when they did that, they went on forward, as couples do. You never know what's going on in a marriage, and it's really none of your business anyway. Well, because they had that episode, even though it was years before, because it was something that was known, that it's not like it was a secret. She didn't run away and nobody knew about it. It was a known thing that happened. She didn't want him to run for the presidency because she felt it would destroy their family and that it would be difficult for them to have that put up for the entire country to look at and have to answer questions about it. And she would be asked about it, and so would he. Their daughters would be asked about it, and so he never ran. That is an example of a time where the wife was not in it, and the husband knew he couldn't do it without his wife, and so they didn't do it, which is, again, why I don't understand why they attack. Anyone would attack Michelle Obama except for that school lunch thing. They attacked Laura Bush for her library thing. They attacked Hillary Clinton when she was the first lady over her health care thing. So of course, the policies, open season, but the personal life, the fact that they're married to the man they're married to, it's just nonsensical. It's a bunch of people who don't know what marriage is. It's a bunch of people who don't understand what it means to marry someone, and it's for keeps. It's forever. And you're with them when they're doing the thing that you love. You're with them when they're doing the thing that you're like, oh, well, I'm all in because we're married. But what are we doing again? You're there. That's what marriage is. And so it's so weird that this is where we are right now. So I want to listen to the Health and Human Services Secretary explain why Medicare for all is Medicare for none. And this is important. And then after that, we're going to get into this poll about 42 million Latin Americans saying they want to move to the United States, 5 million of them saying they're going to move here within the next 12 months. I notice that they don't say anything about immigration or our laws or anything. Here it is, number 5.
The so-called Medicare for all in any of its forms is Medicare for none. And what it would do is either eliminate directly or completely undermine the private health insurance system in this country. And that's over 140 million Americans are getting their insurance from their private employers. And you know, when some of the same individuals sold you on Obamacare and said that you could keep your insurance plan if you like it, this time, they don't even make that promise. This time, it will undermine private insurance. It will hurt our seniors because what it'll do is it'll drive doctors and hospitals out of the insurance system. It'll hurt the promise we made to our seniors for quality access to care.
So I do have a bit of a problem with the whole idea that we've made all these promises to seniors about quality access to care and all of that, which is the reason why Democrats feel like they have the right to make everybody get shunted onto government-run insurance, health insurance, because we're already providing it to seniors. And in their minds, if seniors can go onto it, then everyone can go onto it. And then everyone will be equal in their lack of access to health care. The idea that lots and lots of Americans, most Americans, 80% or more, have health insurance that they love or like or are pleased with, but maybe 15 to 20% do not, or some nebulous number do not. In their minds, that just can't be. You can't have anyone who's not getting the same thing as everyone else. Equality of outcomes is what they're seeking, knowing that everyone will be equally unhappy. But that's perfectly fine, because the ones who are calling for this, like Ocasio-Cortez, she didn't make herself, but I can tell you she's getting used to being driven around and having staff. She hasn't been there very long, but she's already learned the ropes. She knows that when she wants to make something happen, she doesn't actually have to do it herself. She can tell her chief of staff, and he will make it happen. She knows that when there's some issue that she needs to get on television, there's no longer a wait or a question of whether or not she can get on TV. All she has to do is take to Twitter and do a live video, and it's news. This new reality for her is both very real and very much a new level of expectation. She will continue on in this way. It's the same as Bernie Sanders. When he was writing his rape fantasy essays for some unknown little newspaper and not working, remember, he's never really had a hardcore job before where he's got expectations and promotions and yearly or biannual evaluations and in charge of employees and budgets and stuff like that. He's never had that. His biggest job is the job he has now, being senator. And he was not used to that before, but is used to it now. Now he owns a couple houses. He has a boat, has a couple sports cars. He's worth over $1 million. That's his new expectation. So the question is, why would we allow people like that to tell us what we can and can't have? And if you're planning on voting for the Democrats, why would you ever vote for someone who, without talking to you directly, thinks that you should take what you have now, your health insurance that you have now, that they should be allowed to take it from you and replace it with some unknown quantity run by the government, which, by the way, the government runs Amtrak, the government runs the U.S. Postal Service, the government runs Obamacare, it runs Medicare and Medicaid. Those are the shining examples of what you'll be getting a little bit of if you decide to go that route. And again, no asking, no checking in with you, no option. You can't say, okay, so this many tens of thousands of people in my congressional district want Medicare for all, but this many tens of thousands don't. So we would like to keep our private health insurance and let the other people opt into the government thing. And they will say, no, you will all have the government thing. And when you say, I'm not interested in that, they're like, it's too late. We already gave it to you. We already took your other thing and you have this now. So get online to the broken down website and sign up. And if you're paying more, too bad. What can you do about it? That's what Americans were facing over the years after the implementation of Obamacare. Higher premiums, sometimes 1,000% higher than what they were paying before. They were looking at whether or not they could buy food. Some people got divorced from their spouse so they'd have cheaper premiums. And all of this was supposed to be you saving $2,500 a year, according to Barack Obama. But we're supposed to trust the same people who brought us Obamacare to bring us Medicare for all. And, of course, the Green Deal, where we're all going to be riding around in high-speed rail. No cars, no planes. You think we got it bad now with the TSA? Imagine what would happen if they were in charge of all public transportation and there was no private transportation except for members of Congress, senators, elected officials. You know, because people have to exempt themselves out. If you think they're giving up their town cars and their ability to get a staffer to drive them for 3 or 4 hours to wherever they're going to go, you're not paying attention. They're talking about us peons, us people out here in the middle of the country. People who deserve it will get exemptions and get to keep cars, but the rest of us will be on that nice public transportation. Have you heard about what's happening in New York on their subways? It's icy cold there, so the homeless have taken over. They have public body fluids everywhere, and people who haven't showered in a month sleeping on the cars. People who want to take public transportation in New York to get to and from work are having to put up with that. So, I mean, be careful. You're voting for what they're telling you they're going to give you, and worse. That's the show for today. God bless you from the heartland, and thanks for making your home at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Be with you tomorrow.